Hello, art lovers. We offer you, if you will, a veritable gallery of power, passion, horror, screaming elephants, possibly a giraffe, all featuring the greatest, the most handsome, the most talented lady killer, me.
Other way!
Me. This first features the greatest, the most handsome, the most talented lady killer. Our painting is called Me, and this is the evening gallery. My name is Earl Maneein. I'm a violinist. I've worked with the Dillinger Escape Plan. I've written a concerto for Rachel Barton Pine, and I play in the Vitamin String Quartet. Plus, I write my own stuff for my own bands and projects. I started playing music, started violin lessons when I was 5, and started writing music probably 20 years ago. I think something like that, 20, something along those lines. So I have always had my foot in 2 different worlds, almost as far back as I can remember. I've had, like my parents signed me up for violin lessons when I was 5. So I've been steeped in Western European classical music for nearly as long as I can remember. But I'm also the child of immigrants, and I grew up in a working class, at the time, super Irish and Italian neighborhood in Eastern Queens. And all those kids growing up were into hardcore and metal, and we were all sort of part of the tail end of classic New York hardcore. The stuff like bands like Sick of It All and Youth of Today, Biohazard, Madball, Agnostic Front, all that stuff of like, you know, the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s. And so I was going to shows at, you know, in high school, going to shows at like underground, sort of like VFW halls and church basements and stuff, you know. And also, you know, Lemoore, CBs, that sort of a thing. But then also doing that, but then going to classical music school on the weekends, which was schizophrenic, to say the least. Danny Phillips is one of the best violinists out there. His approach to the instrument is it's unparalleled, I think. He's such a consummate musician that he infuses all his students with the questioning aspect of it, of delving deep into it, not just playing what's on the notes, but really finding the spirit of whatever piece of music we are studying. So I think I credit him with so much of that. I think conservatory is an interesting animal, because on the one hand, learning technique, especially on the violin, is always a great thing. There's always you get tools that you'd be hard pressed to find anyplace else. However, when you are in a conservatory setting like the Mannes College of Music, or any conservatory, you're given rules to abide by. And that can be helpful and harmful depending on where you end up going with your career, what moves you, what drives you as an artist. It can be limiting, but also they're tools. And that's the biggest takeaway I think I got an amazing set of tools to use as I will from a school, from a music school. there was always this, and we can speak more about an interesting, I think, race and class dichotomy there. I think part of what I do is there's not a lot of people doing what I do, and it's not because I'm like so special or anything like this. It's really the product of me having each foot in a different world. That if you look at metal and you look at punk and you look at hardcore, this kind of a thing, I think it's representative of a certain class, like a working class kind of ethic. It's like our society's folk music, right? Music of the people. And then when you look at classical music, you look at sort of like the sort of Western European classical tradition. That music has always had an uncomfortable but symbiotic relationship with the upper class, with the wealthy, with the super wealthy, with royalty. And so people studying this music tend to be aspirational in some way, shape, or form. And I think that reflects in our society. But then that's why you also don't have a lot of people doing metal on a violin. Because if you're studying the violin and you're studying Western classical music and you're going to conservatory and you didn't come up in a neighborhood like the way I came up in, like the kind of place I grew up in, you're never going to really want to focus on music. That's not the music that speaks to you. You want to do other things. You're inevitably drawn to other things. But I grew up where I grew up, and I had the friends that I had, and I listened to the music that I listened to growing up. So you asked me what was my, what sort of music inspiration, what kind of music inspired me, or what was my inspiration. I think at my root, I've always been influenced by extreme music. It's always been there. So ever since I was like, 11, 12. What inspires me? I think it's my music and the way I play has always been informed by those two seemingly very, very opposite and distinct strands of styles of music. Vitamin String Quartet is actually a collective of string players, and it's kind of headed by a record label called CMH, which is Country Music Heritage. That's what it stands for. And their original thing was they would put out sort of obscure kind of like historically interesting records by pioneers of country music, like the old guard, like the kind of like maybe they have the rights to like Merle Haggard's first album, or like, you know what I mean, like things like this, where like old bluegrass, old country, and that was so that they were like this niche label based in LA, and they did a one-off. It was supposed to have been a one-off in, I believe, 1994. So I was not a part of the Vitamin String Quartet then at all. They did a one-off in 1994, which was like a Led Zeppelin tribute, and they just hired LA session players to just sort of bang it out, and it was a big hit. So, and they needed a label to put that under, so they called it Vitamin Records, which was just sort of something that they came up with in the moment, and it was unexpectedly successful. So they started coming out with more of these string quartet tributes. The string quartet tribute to Tool, Zeppelin, Soundgarden, whatever, all these things. And so they had to come up with a name for it. So since it was already, they already put it out as Vitamin Records, they just decided to call it Vitamin String Quartet because of iTunes. iTunes needed like that label. So as it kind of got more and more successful, they wanted live faces. So a lot of the recordings is just LA session players doing stuff, recording for this label. And once they started achieving a kind of a bigger level of success, they wanted live people. And so the A&R guys came to see my quartet is called Seven Sons. And that's the stuff that I did with Dillinger. That's the stuff that Ben knows, and like all that stuff. And they came to see a Seven Sons show. And after that, recruited me and Amanda Amanda Lo, who was the other violinist in Seven Sons, but also is in Vitamin String Quartet also. And they asked us to come out to LA, fly us out to LA and like kind of do a test run of a bunch of shows, and like they threw a bunch of music at us, and I guess it was an audition, kind of. And but we did well. So that's how we ended up in this sort of like, I want to say there's like 8 of us in the Vitamin String Quartet. It's, you know, so there's a rotating cast. Like, so I'm actually the only New York guy. Did I just hit the mic? Anyway, so I'm the only New York guy because Amanda moved to LA. But they fly me out for X, Y, and Z. And this next piece is the violin concerto I wrote for Rachel Barton Pine, performed by her and the Phoenix Symphony Orchestra, conducted by Tito Munoz. Tasty. Awesome. Like string quartets and heavy metal. Seven Sons. Fancy, but not. Classical metal. That's what I do. Also collaboration. Our next painting features 7 sons and me. And this is the evening gallery. How did I end up famous? How did I end up awesome? How did I end up the greatest lady killer of all time? final work of my awesomeness. This painting is called Mr. Dark. Good night, art lovers. I'm awesome!